I always have this feeling, even to this day, like literally sitting here, I don't actually know what I'm doing. Because it keeps growing, so I've never actually held a position of the company at the scale or the moment in time. So it's always been new to me. And I kind of like that, and I felt like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And like, out of that, you get, I think, interesting things.
Yeah.
Because you're not encumbered by decision making. If you want to know a little what you're doing, you want to bring different like context of experience, but like, so that's why I chose Stagwell, to be honest. And honestly, it lived up to the expectation, and we continue to grow. Stagwell continued to grow. Obviously, what Stagwell is now, it's a global company of over 13,000 people. And that cut to where we intersected. So about a year ago, I never came to this region at all. We decided, but we've been going to Web Summit for years. We have a good relationship with Web Summit. And they were doing their first event in Qatar. And we thought, let's go. Let's get to understand the region a bit more. Stagwell had some interest in it. They were dipping their toes. They had some companies here.
Assembly, brand new Galaxy.
Yeah, exactly. So we thought, let's go and just kind of see what's up. And we went. We had a great time at the summit. We met like incredibly interesting people. We started to sort of already expand our mind of, what this region has to offer.
Yeah, it completely changed our perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, and it was so inspiring for me. Especially, and then we came to Dubai on that same trip. And what was inspiring to me was sort of how ambitious, just being like walking around the streets and seeing the buildings and, seeing like how much could be done, and talking to, different, whether government agency officials or business people, and like how big and long people think here. It's like just a little different than I think I've been used to, where it's like kind of instant satisfaction on everything. We try to do, at least where we're from. New York is like a boom, 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 boom. This is like a hustle, but it's a different angle on the hustle. It's like, we're going to go big. And I was like, wow, imagine you could start applying, big, long ideas to, digital transformation, the way that you're, think about architecture.
Yeah.
Like, what could we do? It could be really amazing. So that was exactly a year ago, because we just came from the Web Summit on this trip.
And we just started working with Neo.
Yeah, we just started working Neom. So we started also to like engaging in the region as well. So, and then we said, okay, let's like take this a little more seriously. And then at some point over the year, we intersected. We met at Cannes. Yeah.
Sport Beach.
Yeah, Sport Beach. So Stagwell does this big Cannes activation called Sport Beach, where it brings the culture of sports together with business and marketing. We had a great talk. To the point of like, acquiring a company to me is like hiring a person, but like on absolute steroids.
Yeah.
At some level you're like trying to acquire what they do, but more importantly, you're trying to acquire, like cultural people that are going to drive perspective, and, the same thing I talked about. And we hit it off pretty good right off the start, and we continue those conversations. And,
I remember your comments on that night. It's like, hey, you guys seem like normal people.
Yeah. Well, you're like showing up with that tattoos and hats, like,
No suits.
Yeah, no suits.
And then we passed the sniff test in Lisbon.
Yeah. Then we met in Lisbon, and we had, we onboarded them into our. We love eating. It's like Brent and I like travel to all around the world, and like eating is always part of, because what's better way to get into culture than eating?
Absolutely.
So we onboarded you onto our obsession of eating, and we, obviously the work that also you guys do is incredible. So that was that needs to be checked as well.
Sure.
And the more we talked, the more both of us were like, hey, this could really be something special. And here we are, a year later, where I'm over talking.
Yeah, so, I mean, you were talking about this before we started as well, Brent. You said when you guys came to the region, you saw that opportunity, and, we're just talking about a brief now that we'd have never been talking about 6 months ago. Could you tell maybe the team a little bit more about how you see us working together to tackle those briefs that, create alone may not have took on?
Yeah, I mean, look, we view create as being the front of our entire operation in the Middle East. Like, we're going to help with scale. I mean, we've got 1,000 engineers and 1,000 creatives, within our network, and we share resources when we need to. But I mean, we view you guys as like the tip of the spear for all of the Middle East. If we need to hire, it would be hiring underneath you guys, even if it's engineers or whatnot. So you guys are like a linchpin in a region that's growing quite rapidly for Stagwell, where there's 500-600 people for Stagwell now.
About that, yeah.
Across a few agencies, and you're 160
Yep.
of those. So you're a large portion of a growing entity, and we want to help fuel that in any capacity, in any way that we can.
Yeah, our style, how we've made acquisitions in the past is we view it, I think, opposite the way most companies acquire.
Your strategy is to not do anything.
Well, it's not that. It's our strategy is to support.
Yeah.
It's not like some like overlord saying this is what needs to do.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you need?
Yeah.
How can we support you on that? And if that's like scale of engineering, it's scale of engineering. If it's adding some strategic level of support, if it's just like, hey, let's just chat and talk about how hard it is to run an agency.
Wait
we
and
do
see
that.
was more appropriate.
Yeah. The reason we acquired, because of the amazing work and the amazing leadership that you guys have done with the team's leadership, and hopefully grow together and find cool stuff. And
I think the teams are starting to see that already with some new briefs coming in, but obviously the exposure that we've got is significantly more at this point. And what the guys are saying is exactly how it's been. We pick up the phone, we've got this challenge or this challenge. It's just like, what do you need? Let's get it done. And it's been an ideal structure in terms of how to grow the businesses, right? So to your point, we've got the relationships here on ground. We've got the skill sets to deliver here, but we do lack scale. We do lack tech firepower. All of you guys have felt that at different times. And now that problem is solved.
Even beyond the code network, we can help you navigate Stagwell and figure out what partners to tap in within Stagwell, because there's 70-something agencies in Stagwell.
Yeah.
It goes well beyond another 10, 11,000 above our network. So there's a lot of different specialties you can tap into.
Hey,
And
Tom,
some of them are already active here.
I'm curious, what after the acquisition, what is different than what you thought before the acquisition?
That's a good question.
Turn it around.
Yeah, turn it around on you.
I was
Make it a little hard.
today.
Yeah.
Pivot. So, as an entrepreneur building a business, you hear a lot of uncomfortable stories about an acquisition, right? The general, I wouldn't say principle, but the general way of thinking is the worst years of your life as an entrepreneur are the years post-selling because of this integration. And the reason why that is said is because so many holding companies get it wrong. They come in, they mess with the business, they change this. No, you've got to get rid of this department, and you've got to kind of just putting their hands into a business that you know how to run and that you've built with your team. And from everything that I've seen and experienced so far, and obviously background checked and spoken to multiple other people, it's just not like that with Stagwell, and that's why we made the decision. Obviously, there was a tiny little bit in the back of my mind. I was like, is this too good to be true? These guys really like this. Once everything's done, are we going to have a different relationship? Are things going to be different? And honestly, it hasn't been. It's been exactly as it was that first conversation in Cannes when you were like, this is kind of how we do things. This is how we do business. This is what this looks like. This is how that worked and that worked. And it all sounded idealistic in a way, but the reality is everything that we've experienced since has been exactly like that. So you guys know why we've done this. We've explained that around looking for more capacity and capabilities, and everything that we've asked for, we've jumped on conversations with, and we're able to build with now. So it's been a very positive, a very positive experience, kind of moving through that process. It was nerve-wracking at the time when you're signing contracts, but it's
emotional.
Yeah, it's emotional. It is for sure. It's emotional. Yeah.
I think what stood out for me so far is the genuine enthusiasm, and two examples of this. We went for dinner on Sunday after we had a Stagwell leadership session, and Sunil, who's the advisor for Stagwell in the region, as he's leaving to get in the car, he comes over and he's just like, I love Create, and then walks off. And he's opening opportunities for us as a business that we just couldn't open. And yet, of course, there's revenue to that. But more importantly, there's the opportunity for the team to work on things that we wouldn't have been able to bring to the agency for you to work on, and to work with people that maybe are not within our ecosystem right now. That enthusiasm has been incredible. And then yesterday, you know, we were sitting in the car after really Dan had a 14-hour work day. And 20. Okay, sorry. And then, you know,
Chip me on those hours.
he was literally asleep. And Brent goes, okay, so should we make a plan of action? How can we send all of this to Create? Yeah. That's amazing. Like, you just can't ask for more than that. And that means that you guys are going to get really interesting work with really interesting people.
We ended up in a meeting with G42 yesterday, who are at the pointy end of AI transformation for the country. For those that don't know, I think most will know by now. And without going into all of the details, they are building custom LLMs to bring 30% of the world into that space that don't speak English. And they're literally having an impact on the world. And these are the clients that we're now talking to about potentially doing work with. So that's just like one small example of really operating at the highest levels of impact in this region, by coming together as a group and leveraging Stagwell, leveraging Code and Theory, leveraging Create, coming together to create something that just wasn't so possible for us before. So it's super exciting.
Very cool. I think from my side, the way of thinking is something that really stands out. Having seen your talk, The Internet Sucks, and we've kind of covered that yesterday a few times as well. I think for the team, it'd be really cool to kind of touch a little bit on the big what if questions, right? We were promised an internet, a version of the internet that was supposed to make our life easier. We should have been happier, working with the internet. But I think from one of the points of perspective is just how do we think about issues and problems, and how do we creatively find creative solutions for them, and keeping them an open-ended space for imagination. So why do you think the internet sucks?
Yeah, well, I'll explain why I think the internet sucks in a second. But before I do that, I just want to touch on one of the highlights on this trip, and actually cementing the acquisition besides us getting along, was actually yesterday morning. So we were modifying this Internet Sucks presentation for the day. And, it came together very quickly. So, not every aspect of it was quite perfect. So I was going through it with Dia, and we were just looking at it, and I was explaining it. And we just started riffing off what it could be, building upon the ideas and constructs that were in there and the questions we had. And it was just so incredible that if we could have just canceled the day and worked on that, it would have been incredibly fun and magical. And I just think, to me, that was an incredible moment, because it's we're going to do some amazing things. If that, even for 30 minutes of prep, we start building on ideas to a different level. So I just want to mention that, because that was definitely the highlight.
He's got a lot
of
of decks in his future.
Yeah. But creative ideas, I think, in the future. So. Look, this is why the internet sucks, because I love it so much. That's the easiest way I'm going to say it. So the premise is that, first of all, it's so familiar, we think it's never going to change. I'm going to just throw that out there and let that sit there. We think it's never going to change because it's so familiar. And if you think about the constructs that have been designed, that we've been designing really since I started the company in 2001, it's all kind of the same. It's all kind of the same constructs. And if you think about how we behave as humans right now, we're kind of not delivering on that promise that I felt, and really even the late 90s with Yahoo, and it's the internet's coming and all this amazing stuff. It was going to do all these incredible things. We talked about things like the information superhighway. And we're we're going to have information at our fingertips. It's and yes, we kind of have information at our fingertips. However, we have information overload. We don't know what's real. It's not driving perspectives. It's not actually delivering on what information on our fingertips is sort of supposed to do, what the promise was. You think about things like social networking that, I think was invented, around 2006-ish, something like that. Because remember, I started this company before there was, social media and AI and iPhones and all that stuff. a digital company. Imagine that. You think about things like social media. It was called social networking in the beginning because the promise was it was going to connect us in ways that really allowed us to stay in touch with loved ones or old friends from college or whatnot. Now we call it social media. We don't even call it, there's a movie called The Social Network. It's called social media because it's like media consumption. Now we have doom scrolling, we have new mental health issues that we didn't really understand. So that promise is not really met. Or you think about something like the mobile web, it's supposed to untether us from our desks, but all it's done is tether us to work forever and always on fatigue. And, so it's like, you think it's kind of amazing and it's done incredible. I'm not saying it's not amazing. It's done, it's amplified voices and created movements. There are amazing things there. But if you just take the step back, it's not quite enriching our lives. It's not enriching our lives. And I think that's the point where I go, the internet sucks. I don't want to, I'm sure this happens to everybody, you go on TikTok for a half hour. I love TikTok, I'm not knocking it. But after that half hour, you're not like, whoa, that was a great half hour time spent. Yeah. And I will give the analogy of it's like sugar. Yeah. It's not good for you. And that's kind of how I see the internet. It's like it feels good, but it's not good for you. And I just think that similar to when I was talking about the early days of the company, I'm like, oh, and this is a little different, but it's sort of in the same vein of well, it sucks to download video like this. What happens if you make it easier? And I just think that I keep seeing, and we are part of this issue, designing the same thing over and over and over again, slightly better, just slightly better. And yeah, that slightly is good and it could be meaningful. I'm not saying we're doing any disservice to our clients. We're doing great work. But I think this is a moment of time where actually we could leapfrog. And because I think there's unmet needs in humans, it means there are opportunities for businesses. This isn't just an altruistic, hey, let's save the world sort of thing. I think hopefully this puts the world in a better place, but it's also an opportunity for our clients to actually do something incredible because I think our souls are missing something and our behaviors and desires want those things. And I think there's a moment to just rethink how you approach it. And I like to give a couple analogies to just kind of drive into perspective of familiarity of constructs. Code and Theory does a ton in media and publishing. We're probably we probably are the leader in media and publishing.
150, 200?
Yeah, we've been over 150, 200 media newsroom transformations over the last 15 years. That's everything from working with the BBC and Guardian to CNN in the US to all of Hearst magazine. So the list would go on and on. But around 2008 was a moment that I remember as we were actually onboarding into really getting passionate about media and publishing because we had a lot of ideas about the future of news and the future of media. And in 2007, I would have conversations with people and I'd say, one day all our information news we're going to be reading online. We're not going to be using newspapers and magazines. And 9 out of 10 people in that room that I was talking with would go, no, because I love this feeling. No way, never gonna happen. It's been 100 and something, 150 years since the Gutenberg press was invented and disrupted how information was distributed. It's not gonna change. Then 2008, there was a recession. There was the rise of digital publishing. And all of a sudden, in 2008, it's that conversation never happened because everybody was so now familiar using, mainly more computers at the time to get information. The start of the mobile revolution was happening right there. But it was almost inconceivable that the main way to consume information was paper. That was a short period of time like that. And at that moment, media companies disappeared because they just didn't pivot fast enough. And then you had certain media companies that really took advantage of it, like the BuzzFeeds, HuffingTost, those brands just took over and cleaned up because they were innovating at the time and they thought about different constructs.
And nobody ever thought we consume news on social.
Yeah, well, then came social and all that, but it's another sort of lens to all this stuff. So the point I'm trying to say is it is the way it is until it isn't, and the internet has been in our lives 2-3 decades. So we think it won't change because that's the way now we do it. But if you think about the way we design of boxes, I like to say boxes and boxes and boxes. And is this what we're going to be doing in 30 years? Like, is that like how we're, like literally, like, is that what our lives are? We're going to go to concerts and put, rectangles in front of our faces? It just doesn't seem like that's what's, one day it's not going to be that. One day it's going to be a little more evolved. And one day some of these like desires or wants or needs that we have may be met in different ways. And I just think that can start today. We just got to think of an idea with an opportunity to do that. And I think when I say the internet sucks, it's more like this is the golden age of creativity, and AI is like the best thing ever for right now. It's similar to 2001, more so than social media, more so than the iPhone. Like things in the world can change. And the last thing I'll say on this, well, maybe not the last thing because I can keep going, but AI to me is a change in the way we use technology. And I'm not talking about like as a tool because it makes us more efficient. That obviously is a yes, but this is an end. And I think the end part is more important. I think we're going from the information technology, like IT phase, to emotional technology. This actually allows us to engage emotionally in different ways. I mean, we can talk to computers now. We can visualize things in ways that we never even imagined computers could do. Which means if you think of like need, want, and desires and what's missing from our souls, and we can have the computer act as an emotional touch point to deliver value from us, it seems like we're just starting to understand what the internet is supposed to do. Like we may look back in 30 years and go, oh, I can't believe we did stuff that way. Like we literally may be laughing, or maybe in 100 years, just like we would laugh at 100 years ago. And we're like, oh my God, like, I can't believe people did that. It's like when I was a kid, I walked to school. When I was a kid, I drove to school. When I was a kid, my parents drove me to school. When I was a kid, an autonomous car drove me to school. When I was a kid, I was in a vehicle going to school. Like, I was on the ground going to school. When I was a kid, there were these things called roads. Now it's parks intersecting everything. Like, you could just keep playing it out, and it's just a matter of time of when these things change and what our role could be in it, because we are a creative company. Create.
Yeah.
Like, that's the platform.
Yeah.
Obviously, there is maybe a little bit of fear around AI and what it means to our industry and the changes that it's making. But to Dan's point there, and what I've heard him say in these talks over the last few days, it very much is the opportunity that we make it. Everything is changing, but we can evolve with that. Change has always been good to create. We're not a traditional agency that's been stuck doing the same things in the old ways for a long period of time. We've gone from a single desk to this, to these conversations. The only way we've got there is continually reinventing ourselves and looking at what's new. One of the core reasons as to why we as Create made this decision with Code and Theory is because they are at the forefront of technology. Nobody, these guys, us, yourselves, nobody can define exactly what happens next in this space. But what we can do is control the controllables, which is make sure you've got the right people around the table to figure out that opportunity or challenge when it comes. And that's what this is. Make sure we've got the best people in the world around our table. And then whenever that opportunity comes up, I believe that we are going to be at the forefront of figuring it out and taking advantage of it. I wouldn't want to be in a traditional agency right now without this sort of tech conversation, firepower capabilities, because when the world changes, they're going to be sat there trying to steer their oil tanker, and they're not going to be able to pivot fast enough. And we're already seeing that in terms of they're all getting mashed together into some acronym that was like 16 companies, and now it's like 2, and that's going to keep evolving. Whereas what we're looking to do is exactly the opposite, right? So specialize, leverage the opportunity, and deliver in a way for clients that right now no one's able to do. So I had one question for Brent. Brent's the Chief Commercial Officer for Code and Theory, so is essentially playing the intersection between the agency and the clients. The clients are coming to you to ask questions. I need this, I need that. What are you seeing that is different now than it was, let's say, 2 years ago in terms of what are the clients asking for? How are those questions evolving, and how are you better figuring out how to deliver for clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dan built the agency around this idea of creativity and technology intersecting, and I do think clients have caught up over the years, and there's a lot more of those types of briefs.
Yeah.
We used to get briefs in silos: a social brief, a site brief, a creative brief, but they are looking for much more integrated solutions from one partner. AI has completely changed the asks as well. Everyone's looking for operational efficiencies and leadership in terms of how can we incorporate AI into how we're delivering creative strategy and experiences to our clients. And the great thing is everyone's talked about this for the past year and has been trying to figure it out. We've actually put frameworks into place, launched a new service 2-3 weeks ago.
Yep.
AIT, nice play on words Dan came up with. So I think that the asks are becoming more integrated. AI is completely changing the conversation from the jump. And what we're doing and have always done is really try to get ahead of those types of briefs. Create your own brief.
Yeah.
Because if you're just answering the brief, you're not doing your job appropriately. There's always an ask behind the ask or a reason behind the ask. So what we try to do as a company is really think beyond, and oftentimes we're writing briefs. I think some of the meetings we had yesterday, we're going to go back and write a brief for the client so we can structure it in terms of the challenge that we want to address, right? So thinking beyond the brief and trying to think and deliver upon what they need as opposed to what they're asking for is something that we've always done, but I think is even more pertinent now given the way that the asks and needs of the clients are changing, which is exciting.
Do you find, or have you experienced that you have different asks from clients by sector or by markets around the world or regions?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work in commerce, financial services, media and publishing. So I would say you can kind of bucket asks in those verticals, and it spans beyond regions.
Yeah, I think every region has some level of sophistication, at least on the ask. So I don't think there's a change there.
Not nearly as much as by vertical. Like publishing, everyone's scared about, how am I creating content? Who's creating content? Is all the content creation going to go towards AI? Those types of challenges. So we've worked with publishers like Blick out of Switzerland, Star Tribune out of Minneapolis, larger national, international publishers like NBC and Sky on helping them figure out how AI is going to play a part in their overall publishing strategy, content creation strategy, curation strategy. Those are fairly similar. On financial services, they're a lot more cautious, as you can imagine. So the kind of conversations that we're getting is much less around creative and public facing, but much more about internal, kind of operational, how can we be more efficient internally? In terms of deploying code, in terms of creating service models. So those are a lot of conversations we're having around financial services. So I'd say they're different by vertical, but globally they're largely the same.
I like to say I'm surprised how surprised people are at the surprises that keep happening. How often does advancements have to come at the speed for people to realize that's just the trajectory and that's the constant. The constant is the change and the evolution. I think we have to handle that by just assuming what we think could happen is probably going to happen. And I think we should make decisions and plan around that. I think that's a good thing in terms of creativity because it's in the past, it's we have this great idea, but we technically can't pull it off. The technology is here. That is not our limitation. It's just us in this room that is our own limitation. And the sky is the limit on that. So I think as far as technology infrastructure investment, I think large scale investments that create a reliance on singular platforms is probably a mistake. I think the bigger tech stack approach is orchestration layers that allow an ecosystem of new technologies to come in and out in a way that is an effective way to work. And that's something that we're working on with some of our clients now and also internally as us as client zero on that, on how we think about that. I think that's the smarter approach because I think especially with like agentic AI and some of these others, it's creating disruption in some of the traditional SaaS models, which were a bit more costly and challenging to integrate. So I think we're removing some of those barriers. So I think this is just like a smart, big technology lift to make you agile. And then I think it's just creative ideas to think how we could use the technology in different ways and not worry about that it only does this now. That doesn't matter. It's that it will do it. So let's start thinking about it, because probably by the time we finish our implementation, the software, there'll be a release that catches up and we'll be able to execute it on. So it's like, has anybody ever seen the movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure by any chance? I want to reference the sequel that was not Excellent Adventure, but Bogus Adventure.
Yeah.
Because it's like the stupidest movie. But there's a point in the movie that was, because the movie is basically about, I don't even remember, I haven't seen it in so many years, but these like two idiots that like solve problems and they have this time machine and they can go back and forth in time. And on the second one, they realized that time travel, because you could time travel, because you have the ability to time travel, you don't actually need to do the time travel. You just need to think of it. Because that in itself is, oh, I thought of it. Oh, I went in there and I already put the key behind the mat because I didn't remember where the key is. So there, all of a sudden the key is behind the mat.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we are in technology now, is we just kind of have to think of it and it will kind of happen. Yeah, it'll be there. And like, this is where I'm like, this is the golden era of creativity. It's like, oh my God, like, what could we think of?
Well, you made an interesting point yesterday when you were talking about like everyone's a creative and AI is kind of an equalizer.
Well, yeah, I think that in the world of technology and creativity, obviously I think a lot about those two things. I think there's confusion on ideas and execution. And that gets looped. I think it starts as an early child where, some people are good at drawing or singing or writing or dancing, and it's like, you're creative. And the other people, you go, you are not creative. Later in life, I've realized some of the most creative people can't sing, draw, or dance, and actually, most of us are creative. We just gotta have to like let it out. Yeah. And I think AI in some ways is a democratization of creativity, because it's not, you don't have to do it in the traditional ways. And I think that's an amazing thing. Some people may get scared of that, but I think it gets your brain working in a way that maybe our brain was always meant to. That is the uniquely human that our brain has always been like meant to do. And I think from a technology standpoint, there's a similar lens that people are confusing integration with innovation. And they think because I could integrate, a ChatGPT and I get this magical response that I was innovative there. But that's just like using a technology and in a way that's different than like, how do we use it in a way that is like maybe not intended initially, but can solve something else? So I just think that we have to think in these frameworks, and as we're like sitting at our desks and we're solving problems and we find a way to execute more effectively, we go, thank you, because now I can really think of these things. I have never met a client, and even over the last day, that goes, oh, I have too much money and too much time. Never in my life. And if there is one, I'd like to meet them.
We met him yesterday.
Well, no, I don't even think. I just don't. I think everybody. Yeah. So I don't get this whole, oh my goodness, it can do the thing, because that just means we'll do something else, and maybe it creates humanity becomes like a multiple on itself, and we are yet to see some of the magical things that we're capable of. And hopefully, this always goes into like the negative. What if like it goes into? Of course, there's some bad things, and I'm not going to like disagree with that. But I'd like to stay on like, hey, let's not use our brain power on what the bad actors will do. There probably is a lot of people focused on that, or I assume so. But let's use our brain power of like all the positive things it can do, because I think we should spend time there. And unlike the social media, where I don't think we spent enough time thinking about these things in the early days, I think now if we think about like the maturity of like where we want the internet to go to, it just could be unbelievable.
Tyler, I think you got a question?
Yeah, we have a question from Khaled, who's joining us on the live feed. So he says, with internet, AI, and whatever else is to come, it's becoming more of a generalist society with less and less specialists. What's your opinion on how to curate information?
You were talking about
And
this.
do you feel there's a place for specialists in the creative industries moving
Very good question.
Yeah.
It is a good question. I mean, I don't know if I know the answer.
Yeah.
I'm curious if,
Yeah.
if you have. I mean, I think, look, everybody can't know everything about everything just by default. Even if I have access to information for everything, I don't think that I think it's the old 10,000 hour thing.
Yeah.
I think if people are passionate about certain areas of what kind of drives them as a human, I think that will create specialization. Specialization, again, may be a little different in the future. It may not be exactly the execution of it's like, I like to use the phrase like moving, we're going to maybe not move pixels anymore the same way. Like right now we move a lot of pixels, but you still have things like taste and, sort of how you assemble context and ideas in a certain way. Like that doesn't change. So yeah.
I mean, we were chatting yesterday about it's more important to know where to find the answers than knowing the answers.
Yeah.
I think around curiosity, being a journalist in this day and age is so important. And we heard a few speakers at the summit as well talk about this. Is if you're a generalist, that means you're curious enough to have a wide enough aperture to have the taste, right? So you're kind of consuming enough content to be able to curate what is really important. And then using AI to be able to execute or deploy, the output, that takes care of the specialist area. But if you kind of stay within that larger tastemaker space, then perhaps there would be an edge there. But I think for sure the need for a hyper specialized skill set would maybe over time become a bit less relevant. But of course, there are areas that we would still need specialized people. But with AI being more and more deeper in verticals, then it'll be interesting to see how we can spend a bit more time becoming better journalists. That's connected to curiosity.
I think on that, the reality is, if you go back to the start of this conversation, we've got all the world's information at our fingertips, right? But we don't know what questions to ask. I think specialism will be understanding what questions to ask of the tools, the platforms, in order to get the right information. You can be a specialist in an industry, for example. Just because we both have access to the same information or the same tool, I'm not going to get the same information as Kim because Kim's got a body of knowledge which is different to mine and vice versa. So understanding what questions to ask, I think is going to be critical. And the doing of those things is then potentially is going to be outsourced to an extent.
Yeah, I don't know one great creative that only looks at inspiration within their one specific vertical that they're creative in. I've never met that person in my life. Usually like a good creative likes architecture and likes movies and likes different type of design and industrial design, even though maybe they've never made anything physical. So I think that curiosity. I mean, yesterday's meetings were about asking questions, not having answers. And I think we're in a world where, like you said, if you could, the search for the right questions, because then we can start having interesting answers. So it's going to be awesome. AI is a little different than most other digital revolutions. Most other digital revolutions require a transformation that usually comes from top down. And it's like, here's the technology. We select the technology. Oh, we have to change. This is going to change our processes in this way. We're going to reorganize people this way. These are going to be the roles and responsibilities and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's going downward. This is a technology where I actually think it may be more bottom up, where it's like day-to-day people figuring out how it empowers them in their lives. And from that, we sort of move up and we realize this is how it's changing us in the way we do things. Hence why we're trying to put this orchestration layer in to sort of create a system for that to happen. So the service we called is AI-IT. And it's a simple concept of what happens if we create a service support at the company that's similar to the way we do IT. There's a problem, here's a ticket, we solve, there's a solution, it's solved, good luck. But what happens if you sort of think about it from a multiplier of okay, I'm not solving a reactive problem, but what happens if it's proactive of we all have ideas oh, wouldn't it be cool if this is frustrating, I'd rather not do this ever again. It could be anything. It could be save you 2 hours a day. It could be, this maybe saves everybody 2 hours a day because you thought of this idea. It could be, oh, I can do this better and there's more value I can create if I do this. And so we have a support team. We have this, right now it's a simple form, but we have ideas to make it way more cooler than a form submission. But we just wanted to get off the ground. We have a form submission. You go, hey, here's my idea. here's what I'm trying to solve. Takes about this much time. It's just for you. Maybe it's for everybody. You think everybody's doing a similar thing. And then we have a team literally dedicated. All they do, similar to IT. I saw your IT team wearing the shirts today. But imagine a team that is going to support you. So you have an idea for AI, small, big, it will support you. We'll implement it. It could be just, you need to know about the software. It's as simple as this actually exists. Or we may program like maybe a little app, or maybe we may do some bigger thing. And sort of that is an empowerment. The reason I bring that out, that is an empowerment to an individual to make AI make their lives better, their output. Hopefully give clients more value is the idea here. And from that, we figure out what we are meant to do. Because I don't think any top-down knows I don't know anybody knows what every human should do in the future. I think it's naive. We have to figure it out. We have to be resilient as humanity. So we want to give support and reverse it. So then that becomes bottom up instead of a top-down way.
Sometimes we look at work we've done like 4 or 5 years earlier and we feel that it's becoming outdated, especially when it comes to video production or websites. And my question would be like, how do we ensure that the work we're delivering stays not evergreen, but like maybe like a classic, something that we still look at it and we think, oh, this was nice work for its era. It's still nice,
like a good poster that is I mean, look, I mean, this is a more philosophical question of how you design something. I mean, you may have an opinion. I mean, look, I think creatively, if you can try to look at things, good design is like
wide,
and
and
it's
very,
like
very taste-based.
and taste-based, and like there's aesthetic trends, and there are timeless trends. And you want to be in the moment and now, but I think if you have reference points that are just good design, they tend to be forever.
100%. And I think maybe I'll bring it back to the 3 questions that we kind of talked about with the new platform that we're pushing. If it doesn't make you feel something, and if it doesn't provide value, then most likely it won't live for for a long time. I think going back and looking at something that was created 4 years ago, if it doesn't evoke an emotional response, good or bad, then it's probably meaningless. So I think for us, the question would be, how do we make sure that we don't produce work that doesn't have value and doesn't evoke an emotion? And then we kind of have a better bet for it to mean something for you down the line.
I just want to ask you, like, what keeps you up at night? What's like the big obstacle?
I haven't slept in 24 years, so everything keeps me. I also have 5 kids, so that keeps me up at night. I mean, look, these guys can attest to this. When you run a company, you have the weight of a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, and a lot of people's lives depend on your decision making, and we're human and we don't always make the right decisions, and we don't know sometimes if we're even making the right decision. So like it's too hard to answer that question because everything keeps me up. It's like I'm not like a normal human that has the liberty of like just going to sleep and resting, in my pillow and just like, oh, I got to go to work, and just, oh, now I click back on. It's like, I race into everything in my head of like questioning or finding the right questions, or did I not ask questions, and I didn't get to that, and all those things. But like this, it's endless amount of.
I get
And
it.
more like industry-wise, what do you see as like
Look, industry-wise,
challenge or problems?
I think historically, you talked about change, which has been like a value at Code and Theory we've been preaching us for the test of time. Historically, to be honest, change is the best thing for us. We usually have moments of growth and opportunity when there's change, because when it's gotten status quo-y, like then you start going to like non-creative companies. Like, oh, you just need to like
People catch up.
Yeah, they catch up, and the work we do commoditizes, and everybody's able to do it because it's kind of all the same. So in some ways, status quo is more of a threat, historically speaking, to us. So I actually get nervous of more of those type of things than sort of like the disruption of industries and that sort of thing.
That's kind of we had that meeting in Web Summit, remember, with Quincy? And they're like number one in this, number one in that, customer satisfaction, overall experience, and we're like, what are you struggling against? He's like, complacency.
Yeah.
You know, like we're the best at everything right now.
Yeah,
Complacency.
I think I saw someone say at Davos, it's a great line, that humanity's biggest threat is resistance to change.
Yeah.
That's so. I mean, I guess the threat of humanity keeps me up a little at night. You know, I heard there's an asteroid coming in like 7 years or something.
Yeah, not long.
I don't know what that's all about. I didn't feel like reading about it because maybe it would keep me up all at night.
Dan goes, and just knowing you for 9 or 10 years, he goes deep on everything, right? Like he'll start talking with you about meme coins. He's trying to figure out how to make millions on meme coins. Just experiment.
I'm not trying to make millions. When there's a cultural,
I think your goal actually was.
No, I am, because why would you do something and not try to win at it? But my goal specific, like I get deep on this stuff because if there's a cultural thing of importance, I like to understand it at like the deepest level. And I'm not talking about like how just to do it, like actually understand like what is going on, why is this so big in culture? Yes, obviously people want to make money, but there's actually like deep rooted other reasons why it's interesting, like equity value of cultural like momentum. Like that concept is interesting, and maybe, you know, the execution and it's dangerous, it's not good for people and probably all of that, but that idea that seems to move people can maybe be applied in a totally different context. So like to the point of curiosity is like anything that it's like you go deep. So to answer your question, it's like everything keeps me up at night. Like I said, I don't know how to sleep anymore. Yeah, exactly.
Just on the point of disruption and complacency, I think there's a lesson there, right? If we look at, I mean, Kim, you know this. If we look at the agency or the team's biggest successes in the last 12 months, it's when we've not listened to the brief, right, with DCT. It's when we've stretched ourselves to provide a new service that maybe is a push out of our capability, or it's when we've made, and I use the word we very royally here, a bold, creative decision. So I think, you know, complacency, disruption, our success in the last 12 months has been in those spaces, and I'd encourage everyone to not feel like you need to play it safe, and to be bold. And sometimes we'll lose when we're bold, but sometimes we'll win.
My question's more on culture, and that is, what are the values or initiatives at Gardner that you love the most that you hope that we adopt here?
My favorite thing is disagreement. Like I'm a big discourse believer.
Loves to argue.
I love to argue. I love when someone doesn't agree with me. That's because I think actually that's a secret ingredient to creativity, because it's like, what is the other perspective? Like what's a totally different way that looking at this wrong? So we have sort of like this passionate ideas held loosely. I forgot exactly how we say it, but like, it's like, we love to disagree. Like you want to have a conversation with me, I probably will disagree with you. And I don't even know if I do disagree with you or not, but my mind is going to like, let's kind of play this out and kind of push the idea. So, you know, I would hope that is a welcomed thing. You know, I'm a New Yorker. By the way, Tom gave me this cup. I didn't choose it.
He actually brought it with him.
Yeah. I bring it with me everywhere. You know, so
the design friction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I tend to start doing this, and you know, my wife is like, "Why are you waving your hands? It's like aggressive." So I have to keep my hands under my legs. But no, it's like passion of like, let's get to. Decisions. No one knows if they're right on a decision until afterwards. So no one is right, and then no one is wrong. We don't know. So it's like you have to kind of play that out, and like I said, that's a secret. I think hidden secret ingredient to creativity. And actually, in the Internet Sucks, I talk a bit about friction, because it's like creative and designers, we've really worked to remove friction in experiences, and there's bad friction that yes, we don't want, like things that frustrate us. But actually, if you could be more intentional on the good friction, whether it's a discussion creating friction or even in experiences, actually you open perspective and create memorable moments. So friction actually could be a good thing when it's positive, productive, and intentional. So I would hope that that is a welcomed value.
I'm welcoming the challenges and the opportunities that are going to come our way in our industry, because I think that we are very, very well positioned to take advantage of them and do some of the best work this region's ever seen. So thank you very much for your time.